Get it going. All right. So yeah, first of all, I just want to say, welcome to the call. It's morning time in Sydney, but with Scott in the US, it's in the evening. My name's Ryan Henry. I'm a former professional tennis player and managing director of Voyager Tennis. And tonight we're basically going to go through an interview with Scott Doerner, who's our special guest. We're going to talk for around 30 minutes, and we're going to open it up to questions after that from the audience. So if you have any questions at any time, feel free to ask it in the chat box just at the bottom there in the message section. And if you can, keep your microphones muted as well. That'd be appreciated. So I'll just cover off before introducing Scott. I'll just cover off a little bit of his background. So has a pretty awesome racket sports background. Achieved a #1 Australian ranking as a junior. 2 times All-American college player, and he captained the winning NCAA team in 2006 for Pepperdine. Was an ATP ranked professional player. Has also coached top 20 player Sam Querrey as well in the last couple of years. In padel tennis in the US, which is actually a little bit of a different version of padel to what we know in Europe and a little bit in Australia, but has won the US Open there 18 times, which is almost doesn't sound real. And at the moment so he's got a pickleball rating of just above 6.5 singles and doubles, which puts him in the top 30 in the world in that rating. So currently has a career in commercial real estate, but is about to open up a pickleball venue in LA. And he's now he's an Aussie, but he's now based in the US. So welcome to the call, mate.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Ryan.
Yeah, no, it's been a while. Scott and I grew up and played against each other a bunch as juniors, so it's great to reconnect again. So mate, do you want to tell us a little bit about your upbringing, sort of how you got involved in tennis?
Yeah, I mean, thanks for having me. Excited to be here. I'm from Melbourne, the better city. But actually, God, I was born in the States. My folks played tennis back in the golden era of tennis. And so when I was 4, we moved to Coffs Harbour, and I was in Coffs Harbour, mid North Coast, and that's where you and I met, Ryan. I mean, we probably played when we were 9 or something. I think you might have got me, but grew up on the mid North Coast, and then when I was 10, moved to Melbourne. Played juniors, all the Aussie tournaments growing up, and then at 18, I came over to the States and played college.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, and obviously as it's obviously been a really interesting journey, like from you going from tennis through to padel and then pickleball, and that's obviously what we're going to be talking a little bit about today. But it's good to get a bit of context on your tennis career so people can understand the level you got to. But do you want to go through maybe some of the better results you had in tennis, player wins or anything like that?
Yeah. I think you were obviously top junior. We had a pretty good crop coming up, and I think I'd had some back injuries at 16 and probably just needed to mature mentally more than anything else. So when
you were pretty immature, mate. Yeah, no doubt.
bit of a hothead. I was lucky. My parents had some ties over in the States. My mother coached at Fresno State, so they knew the system, and I'd had some good junior results. So college was a pretty good path for me. I took my academics pretty seriously, and my goal was always to be a pro. So that was a good pathway. So I absolutely loved the college route. It was huge for me. The first 2 years I struggled, again, kind of emotionally, I guess. Results weren't there. But then my last 2 years were good. I was ranked in the top sort of 20 singles players in the country. And then doubles, top 5 in doubles, and really loved that. And so I, had some good wins. Benjamin Becker, I had a win over, and then I played John Isner in the final in 2006 in the team event. So beat him in dubs and lost to him in singles. Did break him twice in the first set. Served with new balls at 5-4, and got broken. But that's kind of my claim to fame, really. And then, you know, I had a good shot at it professionally. I never got to your level, mate. I got to, I think, 600. I had 4 elbow surgeries, so unfortunately I couldn't really kind of continue on the journey, I guess. And so that hindered my, I guess, potential. But yeah, I guess I exhausted all that I could.
Yep. Yep. Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, it's such a common thing for players to get to have injuries that stop us. I mean, that was exactly the same thing for me as well. It's obviously pretty hard to, but I mean, you didn't waste a lot of time. You got you made a switch at some point. Well, it looks like at least 18 years ago, based on the number of times you've won the US Open. You switched from tennis into padel.
Yeah.
Now, my understanding of padel is it's almost like the padel version in Europe, except without the glass walls, right? In the US, is that it's kind of like a small mini tennis court?
Yeah, but I would equate it to backyard tennis.
Yep.
How we all kind of grew up, at least in our generation. So the courts, I'm going to give it in feet. I don't know if but it's 50 by 20. So
Yep.
the courts, so pickleball's 44 by 20, so it's a little bigger than pickleball. You use a tennis ball that's deflated, so essentially it's maybe not a red. It's more than a red dot ball. It still has the
Yep.
weight on it, but yeah, I mean, basically, it's serve and volley, return and volley. So that played into my game style, and it was by the beach in Venice Beach, a little bit of a weird culture, and I lived about 10 minutes from there, and I moved in with my brother, and I'm 2.5 years older, so I've never lost anything in my life to him. So finally, in our sort of mid to late 20s, we were living together, hanging out by the beach in Santa Monica, and we thought, let's go down and check this out. And we basically got a paddle in our hand, got absolutely roasted the first set. We played against some guy with a huge gut, and another guy was like, "There's no way we're losing." So we kind of figured it out, and then the next game, the next match, I think we won in 3 sets again, and I felt like by the time we got to the final, we'd figured out, because the net's a lot lower. We figured out you can't use full spin. It's more of a flatter game, a lot of poaching, a lot of quick reflexes, which kind of played into our skills anyway. And yeah, so obviously that became our thing. My brother and I, we'd go down on the weekends and play and get a sweat and hang by the beach. And 3-4 times a year there were tournaments, so we'd sign up, and we actually have never lost ever in a tournament.
Yeah.
So I mean, not a
Insane.
huge sample size, but
Yeah.
we did get a lot of good players down there. Sharapova played, and Marty Fish and Rajiv Ram. It's really fun. So equate it to sort of mini tennis, but you can really peg the ball hard, so it's a lot faster.
Yep. Yep. Yeah. Gotcha. Yeah. So you've got, and looking at the way paddles game, so I did have a look at it on YouTube and watch you guys play some matches. It looks like that's very transferable from tennis in terms of, like, you guys won your first event. It's serve volley and that sort of stuff. Then and which is what the main part we'll talk about now is sort of pickleball.
Mm-hmm.
Now pickleball is quite different from tennis in some ways, at least at a high level. Like, when you're playing low level pickleball, it's quite similar to tennis. You kind of hit drives, you hit volleys, and you don't do much different. But when you get to the next level, and just to obviously to go through, like, your rating wise, you're a 6.5 duper, which is top. As I said, yeah, you're among you've competed against some of the best players in the world. What were some of the skills that you had from tennis that transferred well to pickleball, and what's some of the skills that you had to, like, relearn?
Oh, so many. Probably similar to some of our discussions. I think the singles game in pickleball is pretty transferable to tennis. The ground strokes. You can hit passing shots pretty well with good tennis technique. I think the volleys help too, the hand speed, at least for me, but that's maybe from more paddle. I came into the net a lot in tennis, so hands was something that I developed and really tried to have as a weapon. So that was, I guess, accentuated in paddle tennis. So pickleball, that worked out well. got so many things to relearn. Getting the paddle tipped down as opposed to on the sides. When you, especially when you're dinking, we want to, as tennis players, roll from like kind of a horizontal paddle position, and that's just going to go in the net or out every time. You've got to learn the spins in pickleball. It's more like ping pong. So getting the tip down, I mean, so many movement, strategy. The angles change a lot in pickleball, so using the middle is an interesting one as opposed to working them out to the side. So, God, I think the skills more so in pickleball that I had to learn were just the dinking. I thought was ridiculous. I actually hated it for the first like 4 months I played. I couldn't understand how I could miss a backhand dink, even though I don't think I'd missed a backhand slice in 5 years. This is my ego talking from tennis.
Yeah.
But no, it's definitely a different sport, a different mindset. And I mean, the reason I enjoy it now and I think it's so popular is because I really think there are layers on top of tennis in terms of strategy and different spins and different partnerships. And I think all of that plays into it. But definitely the serve and the return, the passing shots, some of the volleys come into it from tennis pretty naturally. But then obviously learning the roll volley, like especially the backhand flick. I have a one-handed backhand with an extreme grip, so I've had to really learn. I've had to learn a two-handed roll, which is like I feel like a beginner, but I worked at it and did 1,000 a day on a wall, and I kind of feel like now I have that skill a little bit.
Yep. Yeah, it makes sense. Yeah, I know what you're saying there. It's that backhand roll is such a foreign shot when you've been told to keep your wrist firm for 20 years playing tennis. When you hit a backhand volley and come under it, it's a real challenge. How long would you say did it take for you to get to where the level you're at now in terms of like when you first started playing pickleball, you would have felt like fish out of water, starting.
Yeah.
Did it take you 3 months, 6 months, 12 months? Like how much time did it take before you feel like you could compete at a good level?
I mean, I think I hadn't. I got some good results in singles after like probably a year of playing, but really 2 months of actually practicing and learning. And then I had some decent results in doubles, Ryan. But I don't think it was just because of good play. It was more just competitive spirit and just kind of refusing to lose. It wasn't necessarily from like pickleball skill.
Yeah.
So I had some pretty good results there. But I mean, God, I've been playing. I think I've been playing and actually thinking about the game somewhat consistently for probably 2 years, and I feel like I really feel like I'm at a pretty good level now, but I still feel like I've got a long way to go and still improving. And I think I spoke to Colin Johns about this, and he said it took him 2 years of playing full time. Like I'm talking practicing and going to tournaments and committing before he felt like he understood the game at a pretty high level.
Yeah.
So I think coming from tennis, we're like, what is this game with a wiffle ball? It's a plastic ball. Come on, I'm going to be so good at this straight away. And it's like that tennis ego gets in the way because it does take you so far. But then you have to also be willing to invest in what else the game possesses and learning that. And I think that takes a long time.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I know from my experiences playing it, going through that is that it's like there's some technical skills that are very different, like your drops and your dinks and your speed ups and your counters and roll and things like roll volleys, which are really foreign. Like I would say like that's pretty hard to get that. And I'd say like the majority of people that will probably listen to this as well have got tennis backgrounds. So we all come from tennis backgrounds, and you struggle with doing things like that. Like even the grip change at the net, which is you sound like you actually play a strong backhand volley grip, but like I've tried to do, like if you look at say Colin Johns, when he volleys with that like weak wrist on the backhand side, and it's almost like an Eastern forehand grip, that you've got to switch to, which is
exactly
really hard. And then from a tactical perspective, it's you're playing matches where you end up on the kitchen line and you're just like, what am I? Yeah, when you come from a tennis background, you're like, what is this game? Like, it just feels so foreign.
Yeah.
That's no, it's good. It's good fun. And then I guess in terms of you've played against some of the top players in the world there, like Tyson McGuffin,
Mhm.
Alshon, Navratil, Dylan Fraser. Like these guys are pretty much top 10. Like what are
Yeah.
what are some of the things that you noticed when you played against some of those guys in competition?
Yeah, I think it's a lot of it's the pressure, and that they've, like a guy like McGuffin, that he's had 7 years of practicing. He's just got the experience.
Yeah.
Even though his backhand looks like it's come from the trash bin. He somehow puts it in. It's just the experience of knowing, like, and they have such good control. So I'd say another thing too is, they have pressure at the kitchen line. Like, they can stay there all day and just put the ball down and put the ball low, and if you try to attack them, they're fast and they just counter back really strong. So they'll sit there, and just wait for you to pop it up and then attack you. Um, I'd say the other thing that they do really, really well is, they know that they've got awesome disguise. And I think, like, that's been so hard for me to learn, because I was always you know, like, chip and charge down the middle, like, minimize angles, play high and heavy cross court, and you can only really attack down the line in tennis when you're inside the court. Very, very kind of structured tactics and strategy. But in pickleball, these guys are like looking one way and hitting another and using weird spins and grips, like, on the backhand. I'm like, how are you even hitting? I mean, guys are hitting this tomahawk now, where it's almost like a windshield wiper backhand, and
Yeah.
it looks horrible, but they hit it from under the net and brush up on the ball, and it's all of a sudden at your throat before you even know it, and it's going in. And so it's like, that's taken me months to realize, okay, there's no way that guy can do it again. And he just does it over and over again. So there are many different ways to play, and a lot of different disguises that, at least for me, have kept me on my heels on the kitchen. And if you're on your heels reacting all the time, you can never really play offense. And I think those top guys do a really good job of keeping the ball down, playing steady, and attacking the right ball when it's there, as well as having kind of some trickery in disguise, especially Navratil. I mean, the guy's got the spins that he creates, like, are almost make you look silly.
Makes sense. Yeah, it's a very different game from tennis, right? Where tennis is like everyone knows where everyone's going. Like you go to the highest level, like on ad court, Nadal serves out wide almost all the time. He runs around,
Yeah.
hits a forehand. Like, it's repeated patterns of play. But
Yeah.
I guess pickleball, because you're on the kitchen line and you're only, how many feet is it apart? Well, meter wise, you're only 5 meters apart.
Yeah.
You're just, yeah, it becomes a little bit more tricky. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
100%, mate. Yeah, that's interesting. Who's the best? Who would you say of the players you played against was the most impressive?
Oh, I mean, Ben's the most impressive for sure. His his mental ability is crazy. Kind of like the Federer. He's very smooth around the court. He can do all the shots. I mean, his backhand roll is scary, but keep in mind the Johns boys practice ping pong equally as much as pickle, which is saying a lot. I mean, they do a couple of hours a day, and Ben's come from a ping pong background, and he was an okay tennis player, but much better ping pong. So they basically have created a lot of the shots. And if you look at Colin's Scorpion, that kind of pancake shot that he
Yeah,
does, I mean, he put on the other side of the net from him, he would feed a ball into a wall or a backboard, and it would come back at him, and he developed this defense, so he's essentially unattackable. And it's pretty amazing the lengths that he's gone to improve. But Ben's overall game and experience and knowledge and shot selection is second to none. I mean, he's still ahead of but there are a lot of these young players that have had tennis backgrounds that are really embracing pickleball. I think like a Christian Alshon is really improving. I'd say Federico Stacksrud's really good too. I mean, and the other thing is these guys train like professional, like they actually get it. I think there's been a lot of other players like the Julian Arnolds, like the James Ignatowicz's. They came on from tennis talented, but they would just play rec games all day. They never really thought about the game, and so that's why I think their level, or at least their results, haven't been what they want.
Yep. Yeah, interesting. And just going into the Johns brothers, like, so you've spent some time training with the guys and practicing. How did that come about, and what have been some of the key learnings you've got from those guys?
Pretty rare, actually. A good buddy of mine, Chris Harradine. He's from Sydney. Do you remember Chris? He's I think born '83. Anyway, he's over here, and he developed a friendship with them, and was at a club in Palm Springs, and he housed them and became pretty. They keep a lot of things close to their chest. They only practice together, because they've got a lot of. I would say they have a lot of. I don't want to say secrets, but they've developed a lot of things that have been revolutionary in the game, and that's why they've been winning. They stay ahead, and so, I had dinner with them and kind of joked around and got along with them and said, "Hey, would you play with me a little bit? Like, I'd love to learn." And Colin, I'd say, is probably at the forefront of coaching. His knowledge of the game's second to none, and his ability to explain the game is awesome. So was able to work with him for 3 days, and I mean, he was just blowing me up everywhere. It got to a point where I was on the opposite side to him, and anytime he hit the ball, I was like basically running out of the way, because he kept finding me in awkward positions, and I couldn't win a point. And so it was a great learning experience for me. And we keep in touch, and a couple of times a year do clinics together. And so that was super helpful for sure.
Yeah, nice, mate. And in terms of just like you mentioned before, we were talking about just before the call, talking about like doubles partnerships and that. Do you want to maybe talk through, I guess, what your observations around the Johns brothers and sort of like how they work together? And then also too, we were talking about like generally the thing that people should consider around picking a doubles partner, and why you should maybe look to stick with the same partner for longer, and all that.
Yeah, well, I think I forgot the study, but a year ago it came out, and it was a study on team sports and specifically partnerships. Through, I think it was the gamut of maybe like partnership sports, like 2 against 2 or 4 against 4. So they did a whole study, and pickleball was by far the most, like, the highest percentage in dependability on your partner. And oftentimes we'll go out and play, and we'll play 2 sets with our partner, and then we'll rotate and play with another partner, and then rotate and play with the third partner. And you often find that there's better players, but just more comfortable partners, whether they reach in at the kitchen and or hit the right shot when you're defending, or they move together with you the right way, they play the right shot. And I find that at most levels, people just jump on and play, but everybody plays a little bit different. Everybody has different strengths and weaknesses, and I feel like at least at the top level, they change partners every week just based on who their mate is, or they lose that week and they say, I need a new energy. Whereas you see the Johns boys, and I mean, they've been doing this for years. They practice together, they watch film together, they have a strategy and a system. You'll notice Ben covers most of the court. They know where they're hitting, like Colin knows where Ben's hitting basically every shot, and vice versa. And I just think that, if you've got the ability to play, at least get continuity with a partner, it really helps, because you can start to then know whose ball's in the middle. Maybe you might be stacking a little bit, and unwinding the stack can be complicated, and most people don't understand that. And I think where the sport is headed is having more lefty-righty partnerships, where the lefty is playing on the right side. It's such an advantage to shrink the court when you've got a lefty-righty.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, I know in terms of like listening to some of the like Colin talk on his podcast, where he talks about how, you know, Ben's the left side player and he takes everything from the middle, and Colin's almost a little bit more defensive, stands a little bit further back from the kitchen, but, you know, he's ready for all the speed ups. Kind of has that move where someone speeds up and he shifts to the right and covers the backhand, and that's like, it's like a way of almost like they can't kind of get through. But it's interesting watching those guys play, because they just know there's never any confusion, and they kind of know that, you know, on the kitchen line, you know, Ben's got 70% of the court and Colin sort of takes 30. But you see that, I was saying this before the call, like when you play with a new partner, like there's a number of points per set or per match that you lose just because it's like, whose ball is it through the middle?
Totally.
And I know in lower level recreational games, it's probably a little bit more of a 50-50, which is still confusing. It doesn't matter. There's always a line. But as you get better, it's that left side player, right, that takes the majority, takes all the forehands for the middle if it's two right-handers and that. Interesting there. And what as far as your game, like, have you sort of played a lot more on a particular side, and would you consider yourself a left or right side?
Yeah, I think it's important, you know, and I would say this too to tennis, you know, and coaching. I just think it's important to get as much roundedness as you can in your game. Yeah, my forehand was always a better shot, and I actually probably play the right side maybe a little better. I've found that backhand roll out of the air to be difficult. I sometimes have to switch the grip, which I get caught on. And it's tough too, because I don't think I ever hit an open stance backhand in my life, having a one-handed backhand. So for me to pivot on the outside foot on the left, I mean, I can do it, but it's definitely a new skill I'd have to learn. So, I mean, if I had a choice and somebody who was comfortable on the left, I would totally play the right and just be steady. But that being said, on the left, I'm able to use my forehand a lot from the middle and also run around. And you see Jack Sock doing this quite a lot on the left. He's running around and kind of really, really spinning forehands up the line and up the middle, and it's causing the opponents to have to move a lot and shift.
Yeah.
So I would say get as many skills as you can, experience on both sides. But, you know, if you can get hours and hours of practice with a certain partner on one side and you're comfortable there, that just means that under pressure, you're going to make better decisions.
Yeah, it completely makes sense. Yeah. It's funny from my experiences playing, I started playing a lot of left side, and I probably only played 300 or 400 hours of pickleball or something like that, but I probably played the majority of all match times. Almost all match time has been on the left side. It's quite funny when you go to the right side to play, like say Mitch, who's the number one player in Australia, he plays left side. So if I did play with him, I'd switch and play to the other side. It feels incredibly foreign when you don't spend any time on that side. You just dinking cross court the other way just feels really weird. You don't see the same. You don't see the plays unfold as easily and that. So yeah, it sounds like, so basically your advice would be is get skills on both sides. But if you do want to do well with a partner, you can probably exceed your rating if you actually develop a partnership where you either stick to the right or the left and just get really good at playing with one player.
Yeah, if you've got a winning strategy and a comfortability with your partner on a side of the court, and you can stick to it and your patterns are winning, then that's a great way to continue.
Yeah, 100%. So guys, just for those who are just on the webinar there, if you do have any questions, as I said, just feel free to put them in the chat box there. We will open up to questions in a moment. Probably another one just to cover off with you is just as far as what you're seeing players who are improving a lot, or even what the pros are doing. What would you recommend as far as like, if you really want to take your game to the next level, what percentage of time would you allocate to like practice and drilling versus like match play or anything else? Like what are you sort of seeing the best players are doing?
Drilling, and more drilling.
Yeah.
And trust me, I heard that and I was like, this is the lamest thing possible. You get a guy on the other side of the court, one up, one back, and I'm like, I'm missing a dink, and then there's a couple of balls on the court. I'm like, what is this? But if you do that and you do that a couple of hours a day, you get better so fast. You hit way more balls, and especially if you get someone down the other end that you is a good practice partner with good energy. It's just more about hitting more balls, right? And I think getting obviously you can do like kitchen to kitchen dinking games down the line, cross court, that stuff, fast hands. But really, I think it's about having that person at the kitchen, having the other person start back either behind the baseline or in the transition area, and working on that third drop, third drive, fifth drop, seventh drop, whatever it is, and getting up to that kitchen and learning that transition zone. That's, I think, the hardest part in pickleball, is going from baseline to kitchen. And so the more reps you can get in there, just the more you're going to get better and better. So yeah, I mean, plus, like, for time, I'd rather get an hour and a half sweat in and hit as many balls as I can, as opposed to play a game and maybe I'm getting isolated out. I'm hitting 20% of the balls and not really getting a workout. It's more of a frustration. So for me, I think if you really want to get improvement, you got to drill. And obviously, then you've got probably your games on the weekend to really work on some of the themes that you're trying to implement in the drilling.
Yep. Yeah, it completely makes sense. Yeah, when you break down an actual game, yeah, you're probably hitting only probably a third of the balls you would in terms of if you're going one-on-one drilling.
Yeah.
What would you say? Like maybe I'll start at maybe a high level first, because that's where you're at, and then maybe go to more of the intermediate sort of level. But what would you say would be like the top 3 things that you would drill if you had like an hour and a half on the court? Like what would you typically focus on?
Yeah, I mean, I'd probably go. I like to start up at the kitchen and just with someone in front of me, and then we go cross court, but just working on trying to get the dinks down. I usually play games to 10, so I make it competitive. So we'll just feed the ball in the kitchen and anything goes. And so often when you're getting good at that, the rallies along, and you're learning the speed ups, you're learning the counters, you're learning the combos. So do that all 4 sides, and then we'll do the transition stuff. So, one person's at the kitchen, they feed the ball in, and then I either drive or drop, and I'm playing the point out in that half of the court, and then obviously switch to do the cross court. And so, it's not reinventing the wheel, but I'm just trying to get as many reps of at the kitchen dinking and different dinks, dip slices, rolls out of the air, and then all transition stuff. And then maybe at the end do a little bit of the serve and return.
Yep. It's actually interesting. You just described Colin Johns' top 3 drills. I don't know whether you got it from him.
No, I didn't. But
yeah, he literally someone asked him that same question. I was just interested to see what you said in a podcast. Yeah. He said, "What are the 3 drills that you do if you couldn't do any others?" And he said, first one was kitchen to kitchen, then play it out.
Yeah.
Second one was exactly what you said, where one's at the net, the other one's at the kitchen line. You compete to get one forwards, and the third one was actually skinny singles, which is just half court, which is basically just getting the reps up and that same game. Interesting, you talked about the dinks and the speed ups and the counters and all that, and then you've got then you focused on obviously getting forwards to the net in the transition. So you're working on obviously your touch in terms of landing the ball in the kitchen as you're trying to get forwards to the net. Do you have any focus on being the reverse of that, where you're actually the player who's at the net obviously should be making it hell for that player trying to get forwards? Do you spend a lot of time focusing on that, or is that just? Oh
yeah, no. I mean, when I'm at the kitchen and my drilling partner's at the back, I'm trying to snap. If they hit anything high, I'm literally reaching in and trying to punch it and hit a winner on them or keep them back. People like at the top level, guys and gals are so good at getting that drop down, that third drop, and not only down, but they get it down with some action on it. So then at the kitchen line, you're actually there like defending while they're crashing on you and gonna
Yeah.
speed up the ball. So yeah, I mean it's you do. I'm definitely trying to put some action on it or have some disguise on rolling it to a spot where they might not get it.
Yep. Yep. Yeah, makes sense, mate. Got a couple of questions that have just come in,
Yeah.
so I'll go through them. Chase has just asked, how do you stay on top of the game? So how do you stay on top of how the game is progressing? What resources are you consuming to keep your knowledge up to date?
Just besides trying to play with some of the better players, which I'm lucky live around me, and I'll get invited to some of those games and keep up on some of the new technology with the paddles, the balls, or the scuttlebutt. It's often just a bunch of rumors and kind of pickleball talk, which I don't really care for. But they're I think pickleball TV is pickleball TV, and I think YouTube. They're showing it over here in the States on a couple like on the tennis channel. There's a little bit of pickleball. So, but pickleball TV is, I think, it's a free website, and they're showing a lot of the events. So, tuning in and watching that is something that's interesting to keep up with.
Definitely. And just on the back of that too, one thing that I've struggled to find anywhere is, pickleball statistics. So like if you've got so up until more recently, Craig O'Shaughnessy kind of
Yeah.
he's provided the best statistics of all time regarding tennis at every single level, every single play. Like, so now, when I think about it, if I wanted to become a good tennis player, I'd go straight to the stats and then I'd work out what do I need to work on my game now the most. For pickleball, it doesn't seem like, I mean, I've looked around, relatively hard around the internet, but I can't find a lot of stats in the game. Are you finding the same, or have you got
I played in the Major League Pickleball last year, and there's one or two guys out there that are doing stats. They're kind of hard to follow, and it's also tough to track in pickleball because, like, for example, if I if I go for a dink and I kind of leave it a little bit high, and the opponent speeds it up at my partner who's kind of not really ready, is that on me, or is it a good shot on the opposing? Is it a good attack from the opposition? Or so I think like some of that stuff is tough to track. I think they do have the stats for like missed thirds and missed dinks, and I think you want to look at some of the stats. Like, let's say you have 10 unforced errors in just at the kitchen line. I think you want to look at that over the course of a match, not just like, oh, I missed 10 dinks. Well, it's like, well, how many did you hit? Did you hit 20 or did you hit 200? Because that's obviously a different stat line.
Yeah.
But I think definitely like the stats that are becoming more relevant are, sort of missed thirds. How many times do you establish at the kitchen is a good one. But they're trying to go deep dive into, when you attack at the left shoulder, and that's what the Johns boys do, is, they know that when they attack, like, for example, Travis Rettenmeyer, who's a buddy, and he's a tennis guy, right? So he's very strong with his backhand counter because like that's a very strong tennis volley. But it's known that if you can catch him on his right shoulder and kind of get him to chicken wing, he's waiting there all day. So you can really target certain areas in his body. And so I don't know if there are stats there. It's more of just like, visible. I'm sure there are out there, but it's not necessarily a public thing yet.
Yeah, it'd probably happen over time.
Yeah.
All right, great. Yeah, so we got Cameron's asked the question. So when good players come to the kitchen and are in a long dinking rally, starts close to the net. So we're talking about, why doesn't a player simply play a power shot and force a mistake on the opponent's volley? These rallies seem common. Cheers.
Yeah. I mean, by all means, if you can do that, go ahead. I find that, when the ball's below the net, and especially if it's a shallow dink, because all parts of the kitchen are not equal. A shallow dink, meaning close to the net. A lot of tennis players will come in and be like, "Oh, it's close there. I'm just going to speed it up." And oftentimes, if people are coming from a tennis background, they, like I said, they hit the ball from a horizontal position and put side spin on the ball. And anytime I see that, I duck, because there's zero chance that ball's going in. So you've got to brush up the back of the ball and create like actual top spin in order to keep that ball in. So I think when you're at the kitchen and you're speeding up, that's good. But if the opponent's hitting the ball, then that's even better. But I would caution that if you're constantly speeding up the ball at the person's volley and they get wind of leaving it, or if they start getting, the counter down, there's no room to respond to that. So what I always think about if I'm attacking especially from a kitchen position off the bounce, is I always think in a combo. So I've got a backhand. I want to speed it up. I'm going to go at the right shoulder, and then I'm going to be ready with the forehand combo. So I always think in steps of 2 instead of just getting the ball under the net. I'm just going to rip a backhand as hard as I can. And if it comes back, I'm dead. And if they leave it, it's hitting the back fence. So I'm always trying to roll it kind of 3/4 and then get that counter. So I've got more percentage and more margin for error.
Yep. Yeah, nice. And Cameron, I think the other thing to also consider around that is that it depends on the level of play too. So so at Scott's level of play, obviously everyone is super strong on the counters and the reflexes. So you got to be really careful that's why when you watch the pros play, they're staying off in the dinking rally for longer because the counters and the reflexes are so strong. But when you're playing at more of an intermediate level, what we do find is that you do get rewarded more for speeding up. So that's probably the bigger difference. Depending on what level you're at, and depending on who's in front of you, really depends on whether that strategy is good or not.
Agreed.
Yeah. All right. So we've got Karen's got a question here. So when you are just starting out, progressing from tennis to pickleball, do you have any recommendations on what skills to focus on so you don't give up with frustration? I.e. some little wins.
Yeah. I mean, I actually, I think that it's a good question. I think that when I would introduce people to the sport, I'd bring them up to the kitchen and have them dinking, and they're just like, want to run off the court and hide. And so now I think just if you've come from tennis and you got good strokes, you want to rip the ball a little bit from the back. And I think a good drill is, have somebody at the kitchen volleying back to you while you're hitting drives, but also see if you can mix in a drop that kind of lands in the kitchen. So maybe you go like 2 drives, 1 drop, and that gives you some ability to feel the ball a little bit, because the wiffle ball is different. It weighs different, and it responds differently to the paddle. And then I think if you can almost progress from the baseline to the kitchen, it makes it easier. Sometimes even me, if I'll start at the kitchen and I just have no feel that day, and so I'll go back to the baseline and just try to hit a few ground strokes. Then I'll sneak into no man's land, or the land of opportunity, as Colin Johns calls it, and I'll try to just work on maybe some half volleys, some pickups, get it into the kitchen, and that way I can build some feel. So I often find that people beginning, I just push them back to the baseline, say, look, just start hitting the ball, whack it, get a feel for what you can and can't do from the back, and then progress into the kitchen from there. Because I think the flip side is less enjoyable.
Yeah, just starting out purely as a player that's dinking and dropping all day. Yeah, 100%. That's good, mate. All right, we've got the last question here. Sean, who played against last night, he's saying great insight. So I'm curious about speed ups. Once a speed up interaction ensures, is there a certain counter strategy option? And what type of strategies could we work on? Acknowledging things speed up really fast and it becomes somewhat chaotic quick.
Yeah, I think as soon as, again, that's why the speed ups are, first and foremost, you want to try to have your dink and your speed up look the same, so the opposing player doesn't know what's coming. That's huge for deception. But if you kind of know you're playing against a mate and they love to rip it, or they get a certain ball and their eyes go huge and they're going to tag you, you can either A, get out of the way, but B, I think just getting the paddle in the right position is key, is huge. So there's really two ways to do that. One is I call it the motorbike, where you throttle your wrist down a little bit, so you have that the paddle it's facing a little bit down, so that if they do hit it at you, all you need to do is get your paddle in front of your face or in front of your chest, and just let that ball come right off, use the pace, and it goes right back down at the kneecaps of the person speeding up. The second way to do that is basically on the other side, where you kind of do the windshield wipe pancake a little bit, and you can really just hold that in front of your face. Again, the angle is, if I'll do it on the side, it's a little bit down that way, so that when the ball hits, it doesn't ricochet down into the net, because the speed that it's coming at has a forward force, but also down. So again, that's, I think, to your point with at the professional level, the reason they're playing slower is because their angles on the counters are so good that if you don't hit a spot where they're awkward, the ball comes right back at your kneecaps and you have no time to react, let alone speed up again.
Yep.
So I hope that answered the question there.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, it makes sense. Yeah, we were playing a game last night and having that discussion around the different skills. Sean's come from tennis, really strong tennis background, and it's just those skills that you just don't work on in tennis. A counter. There's not really anything. There's nothing like it. That's similar, but it's a really good point around which I hadn't thought of, which is around angling your counter to go at the feet is obviously major advantage when you're doing a reflex volley. Starting with them low and you're high, hitting high balls is obviously huge. Awesome, mate. Well, thanks guys for your questions there. Probably just the last sort of question for Scott there is being an Aussie, any plans on coming out to Australia? You considering the league coming up?
Yeah, mate. Yeah, maybe I might have to enter the draft and put some training shoes on and get out there. I'd love it. I mean, my dad's in DY, so I got to get back and see the old man. But maybe it could be a great trip to bring the family. But I'd love to get down there and get into the Aussie Major League Pickleball and just spread the word and do some clinics and camps and get people learning and playing pickleball. It's we're obviously a lot of us are tennis purists, and that's what we learn. But I think all these sports, these racket sports, padel, pickleball, are super fun. Gets people out. They're very social, and if you can learn a thing or two and find a passion, it's even better.
Yeah, unreal, mate. No, it'd be great to have you out here, mate. Strengthen up the league and play some dubs, mate. It'll be good fun, like old times.
That would be.
So just to sort of wrap that up, mate. Really appreciate all your insights there. Super valuable. Even I know for me, I learned a ton. Mate, really enjoyed it, and I hope everyone else in the audience enjoyed it as well, and those that are going to watch on YouTube. So thanks again, mate. Really appreciate your time, mate. We'll catch up soon.